Hello, Prasad, and good evening to you, good morning to me. and thank you so much for joining into this conversation. It's a privilege to have you. And
My pleasure.
also, it's the first of our series of conversations about the center, about being a centrist. And so it's also a kind of a shubharamb that is happening with you. So I want to welcome you with a pranam, welcome you with my regards, my respects, uh, and for all the guidance you provided for all these years about these things. So hoping that this conversation also continues that flow.
Thank you. It's my pleasure entirely because when I speak with you and when I have these conversations where we are authentic and speak from the heart and speak without necessarily having to do something to somebody or wanting something from somebody, it allows for you know something emerges. So it is not like my ego needs to make a point and prove something, but just have a heart to heart and see where it goes. So I enjoy these conversations with you, and I'm happy to be doing it again.
Lovely. When you say that, my mind goes yes, 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 because I guess what I'm trying to capture and what we're trying to capture is a certain spirit. And I think what you have shared already, that this conversation we are having is also kind of in that same spirit, and that's what I want to kind of get a grasp on, which for now I'm calling the center, and I'm willing to change that word, but just center. And what you just already shared made me realize that we are trying to have this conversation also in the spirit of the center, without a ideological position, but really in an emergent here and now space. So that almost in a meta way makes me feel very, very happy.
Good. Thank you.
So, Prasad, let me start with this question itself. What is the center? And you can answer it at an individual level, at an ideological level. Yeah, how does the word center kind of show up for you in the context that we've been speaking about?
For me, the word center always had a lot of importance. And I used to look at like a center of a circle in a mathematical way. If you just know the what you might call a radius, you can create the entire circle. And there is also a Native American uh, saying that says people stood at the periphery and laughed. I stood at the center and smiled back. Uh, so there is something about being at the center of things is something that I have uh, been interested in for a long time. But over time, my thoughts shifted. I realized center doesn't have to be being the center of attraction, being the person whom everybody listens to, or in a family, being the head of the family, around whom the family revolves around. Like a similarly political leader, any of the leaders would like to be the center of whatever is going on. So that created a certain sense whether the center really means a place of uniqueness, a place of higher reverence or respect. So for some time, I had suspicion about the place of center as a place which may have a lot of shadow for some time. Then again, over a period of time, I began to learn center could be like between two polarities being at the center, like the metaphor of a swinging, what you call a child who sits in a child swing. I have 3-year-old grandnephews, 3-year-old and 5-year-old, and we meet them in park sometimes. So my nephew lives not too far from my house, so I love to spend some time with these wonderful grandnephews. And when we go there to the park, the kid can't even say faster properly, but he looks at me like higher, higher, faster, you know. So that means more he goes to one end, more he loves to explore the other end as well.
Mm.
Somehow that interest of swinging from one polarity to other polarity is very satisfying to that kid. So for them, the center is the place of stability, center is the place where actually they are safest and closest to the ground. And when they go to the extreme polarities, they are at kind of a dangerous situation, if you want to call. If they're not careful, or if something happens, they can fall, and then the injury can be, maximum at that point. But when they choose to, that moving to the extremes, moving through the extremes, is something that is very exciting, very rewarding, and energizing for them. And then they move through the center, like that is a place that changes the direction for them. From one end, as they are coming down, it slows down. Center is the place where they have the lowest, what you call velocity, if you want to call, and then they move to the other side, and then they pick up, and then they go somewhere else where the velocity becomes completely zero, and then they change the direction, and then they come back. So obviously the center is not the lowest velocity, it is like decelerating. I have forgotten my physics, but the key part is center is a place where it changes directions. It allows us to look at one polarity, allow us to go into another polarity, and come back. So finally, where I am is to connect it back to what Bhagavad Gita says, samabuddhi. So the yogastha kuru karmani, after that is said, do actions in your yoga. And then the question of what is yoga is answered by samatvam yoga uchyate. That means when you have that equanimity, that balance, like in the center of the swing, or like center of two controversies, if you can stay in the center and listen to both points of view, both perspectives, without getting caught with raga or dvesha, the attachment or the anger or frustration or animosity towards it. If I can figure out a way to be in the center and be non-judgmental about it and listen to all parties and all perspectives, I thought that's a pretty nice place. So actually, according to Bhagavad Gita, being in the center, which he calls it as equanimous state, mind being silent, you know, um, the that is where he says in the center is where the mind is completely silent. If
Mm.
that is the center we are talking about, I think I'm recognizing that is the place which I rever and I cherish, and I look forward to being at that center where there is a certain balance in perspective, balance in my ability to look at it, and balance in being able to hold two different points of view and not get uh, tilted by either one of those. So, so as you can see, there are layers of understanding which
Absolutely.
developed over a period of time for me. So I could not answer to you in a straightforward definition of a center, but I had to give you some
Yes.
experience and some examples to clarify where my mind has evolved, or where I have got some clarity about it at this moment.
Yeah, Prasad. Let me also share. I think there are some also, since you had a Bhagavad Gita reference, there were a couple of other references I wanted to bring up and understand how you interpret them. One was
Okay.
obviously the middle path and Buddha's middle path. And
Yes.
one of the first things that it evokes in people when we say center is middle path. When I was younger, and my dad would use middle path as a way of saying average, balance.
Yeah.
And but as I've grown, I realized that middle path need not be average. It may be being fully present to what is, rather
Yeah.
than to keep dragging it. Because even if you drag something to the middle, that's a form of violence. You're trying to not be with what is. And so for me, a little bit of Vipassana, a little bit of Alan Watts kind of philosophers, Krishnamurti, Bruce Lee, some of those kind of help me understand that it is the path of being where aliveness in that moment is. And there is a stillness there also. So Kabir, for example, also speaks a lot about the markaz, the center, the चक्की के बीच में जो दाना होता है वो पिस्ता नहीं है, and the eye of the storm, and जो मरकज से लगा रहता है. So something about this reference is like historic, like it's always there. Even a Rumi reference, which is a email signature of mine, that beyond right doing and wrong doing there is a place, I'll meet you
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I am like, I'm such an opinionated person who will not very easily quote someone, and here is a quote which is coming from 400-500 years ago, translated, and I find it so resonating that it's my email signature, and there is definitely something being pointed out by all these people, right? So what is, yeah, so just wondering, what is a modern way of finding that pointer that you can't talk about, I guess, but you can point to? I don't know. So yeah, would love to hear your thoughts.
I think that's a very nice way of framing it. Yes, Buddha talked about uh, a middle path, and in that respect, what he says is not very different from what Mahabharata conversation about Yudhishthira with a baka, which is essentially Yamadharmaraj having a conversation when they were in Vanavas. Um, so the idea of middle path is what exactly that is referred to. And even if you take Yoga Sutras, essentially the idea of silence, what you are talking about, between the Bahiranga Yoga and Antaranga Yoga. Bahiranga Yoga being Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, and Pratyahara. And then the mind, the Antaranga Yoga is Dhyana, Dharana, and Samadhi. In between state is where there is a silence. There is a certain, what you might call, even Viktor Frankl talks about between the action and reaction, between the stimulus and response. There is a quietness, there is a place. In that place, there is opportunity or there is possibility. That is the unmanifested place. And that's where the mind shift we talk about, that's where people can listen deeply and be present, or what we call mindfulness. So there are lots of pointers to being present and being fully being with whatever is there in the moment, rather than going somewhere in the future or worrying about what happened in the past. So, in time, in space, in relationship, in ideology, in all of them, um, choosing not the extreme path, or choosing not the surrender, I mean, not surrender, but giving up path. So, not necessarily being aggressive and violent, but not necessarily being passive and completely becoming powerless. There is a place, there is a middle path
Absolutely,
where
yeah.
there is an enormous strength in being in that middle path. That seems to be exciting to a large number of people.
Definitely, I think that resonates. And using your swing example, Prasad, that resonates with a lot of people. I also see that the swing is anchored in something that is steady and at the center, and that
Yeah.
probably enables the swing to actually swing to the extremes. And just one more, I mean, want to go a little deeper before we go out of it, which is also around clarity of perception, right? Like at the center, perhaps the perception is the clearest because it's not tainted by a position. It is
Yeah.
where maximum data is present, which is in the moment, and where from a complexity point of view, the emergence, the most ripe emergence occurs from the center, is how I was seeing that. Would that be accurate to say that in that moment is where uh, the highest possibility of what may happen is, or what's the case for staying in the center? I think that's what uh,
So for me, Obviously, the point of transformation is the center. So in that, so whether it is from left to right, right top to bottom, whether it is right to wrong, the point of transition and the point of change, or the point where there is no movement, as you rightly identified, in the swing there is a point at which all of these are, the swing ropes or swing chains are coming from. There is very little movement. And similarly, you talk about when you are on a bicycle, the center of the wheel moves the least amount of distance. But the center, I mean, the point at the periphery moves the largest amount of distance. So when you are at the center, you have the lowest amount of disturbances, if you want to call. So just like you said, the center of a storm, I have seen some of the storms here, like in especially in the Midwest of the United States. There are lots of wind storms, and there are lots of issues that come about, and sandstorms in Dubai or any of them. And so they talk about, if there is any kind of a warning for any such big storm coming up, people go into the basements and stay, because at that time the storm can pick up, and very quickly even the houses and the cars and the trees, everything can be uprooted and can be thrown apart and all of it. But if you look at the center of the storm, is supposedly very quiet. And same thing we talk about in the ocean. If you look at the center of the ocean is very quiet, but only at the edges, the transition points between the water and the ground is where there is a lot of turbulence that takes place.
Right.
So from all references, definitely center seems to be a quiet place, a reflective place,
Definitely.
a place where there is a balance, a place where there is a presence, where that is the point of, many times it's like an origin that has the maximum potential possibility for both creation and destruction. So that's why I keep thinking of it as a point of transformation. So till we reach that center, till we operate from that center, we always have a bias. We always have a certain point of view which we are trying to project. The ego operates very effectively when we are away from the center.
True, Prasad. So this is great. I think we are narrowing down onto something. And what I'm gathering, so one idea that came to me is maybe we should celebrate the equinox days as the center days, because equinox is when the earth is the tilt of the earth is straight, and we should use that occasion. But just to engage in something like a centrist movement, what I'm gathering is that it's almost like a prerequisite to try and anchor to the center, right? To the Shantam, to the ever-present origin, or to what we are pointing out. Like at an individual level, what would you say are practices or ways that bring an individual to their center, without which then doing anything outside is quite pointless, right? You just recreate the patterns.
Very interesting. Obviously, the center can be reached in two ways. So one way, when you reach the center, which is the static center, which is actually a dull place, which is a dead place. It is a tamasic center, if you want to call, where we are running away from action. We are trying to be lazy, and we are trying to be in a state of non-action. Not inaction, but non-action. Whereas there is another kind of a center, which is a dynamic place, where you are centered, but you are open to whatever happens. So that there is a certain vibrancy, there is a certain aliveness, there is a certain, what you might call, awareness of both extremes. So there is a choice in the dynamic center. But there is no choice, there is only deadness in the static center.
That's a
so
distinction. That's a very important distinction.
Yeah, because otherwise you can get to a place of tamasic state and say, oh, I am a centrist, I don't do any this one, I don't believe in extremes. That is not necessarily the dynamic center we are talking about. That means the center which is dynamic and which is present and which is alive and which has infinite possibilities is a center where you understand implications of both. You have a certain deep resonance and a deep empathy, and you can see the right in both sides. You can
Yes.
actually take any position and justify
Yes. Yes.
completely to the other side. So it is like you can play for or against in a debate, and you can be equally passionate and you can be equally excited, and you can go for success in both, because there is an awareness and there is a certain amount of embracing both points of view, embracing the polarities. From that embracing the polarities, the center that comes is a very dynamic center. And that center, there is presence of the spirit. So that means it is not, when I'm talking about finding my center, when I am in that dynamic center, I find that center is not just mine. At some level, there is a universal connection. There is a spiritual
Hmm. Hmm.
connection to the center of the universe, or center of humanity, center of, what is considered to be at some level very, very powerful spiritual place. So where I can listen fully without having to wait to talk. I can empathize completely without necessarily what you call agreeing with them. You know, I can be honest and I can punish the other person without being angered, without being, so that means it is dispensing the justice, not necessarily emotionally connected with it. So
Hmm.
there is a certain non-attachment and certain willingness to surrender to the moment, willingness to let go of the position that I can take either one, or
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
better position for me. This will play off better in the long run. No, I am actually becoming truly a sakshi, a witness, and I'm witness and an actor at that time. So to a certain extent, I am dynamically present, but I'm also able to look at what's happening outside of my ego, and I can watch myself in a curious way, not
Hmm. Hmm.
necessarily I will die, or I better do this, or they will think I'm stupid.
Right.
So um, this kind of a dynamic presence where there is an acceptance of both points of view, both polarities, and with full awareness, when I'm in that center, there is power in it. It is not force, there is
Hmm. Hmm.
power, and that power can be unleashed. But when you are in that centrist position where you are given that role, it is really a significant, it's a privilege to be in that center, because there's a lot that is dependent on you to be without bias, without judgment, without an opinion, where you're truly in your center, which is at some level the center of humanity or
Hmm.
center of
Hmm.
divinity,
Hmm.
you might call it.
Beautiful. So what I'm hearing, Prasad, is deep listening, deep empathy seem to be practices, and maybe then more we dialogue and dialoguing with both the poles to find. I think those seem to be the immediate practices, and there's always a resistance in the mind, right? Like resistance, or I guess I have been amused also in the past. I was working for a client in the cement industry, and I always thought cement is like destroys the planet, but in the cement industry there was a poster in that factory of how cement supports climate change and how it prevents heat from reaching and so on. I was so surprised, and that revealed something to me that I had never ever imagined, that the narrative inside the cement factory is that they are also doing what we are trying to do, which is to reduce climate change. And there is some resistance and discomfort to exploring a counter view, because almost feels like there's a threat. If I even allow space for a counter view, there is something that resists. I don't know what that is. And I know we may be going a little too micro, but in very, yeah, I guess be in practical terms, when I expose, why should people expose when they themselves to a counterpoint, when they feel maybe a sense of threat about it, or cognitive dissonance, right? Because our beliefs are so held and cherished. So how does one build that agility, and how, like, yeah, what is the pathway to actually making it real in a sense?
My experience has been, it is not conceptual, or it is not a framework, or it is not what I read, but over a period of time, um, like a couple of years ago, I think I mentioned this to you. A couple of years ago, February 2019, I was doing a transformational leadership program for about 30 people in Indian School of Business, which is a 4-day program I had been holding like 3 times a year, for probably 14 years or 15 years. And as we were actually going through the program, and we had a chance to listen to a videotape by Arvind Eye Hospital founder, Dr. V, where he talked about how an old woman, who is probably in her 70s or 80s, her face is, has got lots of life experiences, have given the richness of an old, face, and she can't see properly, and she has cataract. And so when he suggests saying, for you, this is not going to work, I will do this instead, this is a little bit risky, do you trust me? Or something like that. And she puts her, hands together and says, you are like God. Whatever you say, I'm going to do that. And then he comments on that. If I am giving eyes day after day after day back to them, and if they are willing to put their eyes, most precious instruments, and sometimes, you know, even bigger things, when we take risks or when we do experimental stuff, they're willing to put their lives in our hands as doctors. Then I have to really carefully think about, he said something like, who is doing this? If I do it as Dr. V, or if I do it with the arrogance, or if I say, I know I have done thousands of surgeries, don't worry about it, and I do it with a certain non-challenge, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter how many people I saved. I could make a mistake in this moment, and I could make her lose her eyesight permanently, and I could get away from it by saying something, as many doctors and many hospitals do continuously, because there are, operator error, they call it, like a mistakes that happen. They're preventable, or sometimes, many times, they are maybe unpreventable. Okay, fine, I understand that. But he says, when she puts that kind of a faith, every time I need to transform myself, I am being the instrument of God, and what I'm doing is God's work. And I have to do that work just like the God has done. No mistakes acceptable. No, this one. I need total attention. I need to be in that quiet place, in that centered place, where I can do the best job I can.
Beautiful.
I have listened to that. I have elaborated more than what was in that video, but what I got out of that video really. But when I heard that, maybe for like 100th time, at that time, 99 times, I was touched, moved, inspired, but nothing happened. But at that time, it touched me in a way where I realized I'm doing these transformational leadership programs for past 30 plus years, how much of transformation did I have recently? I know I have gone through several transformational experiences, but have I gone through the same level of transformation that I'm trying to instigate, trying to catalyze, trying to provoke in people who have come to the program? How many years since I have actually been that present, like this Dr. V is to this old woman, saying, "You are the only one, and I need to work with you. I need to serve you. And right now, I need to be, guiding the God's hands through me, through my mind, you know, and I need to operate like this is it. This is the only thing that matters. And I need to be fully centered in that space of where I'm a witness and an actor at the same time, and I'm doing God's work."
Wow.
So when I heard that, it was like, I remember it was like 10:19 in the morning, on that particular day, February 19th. By 10:20, I'm clear that this is the last workshop I'm going to do.
Wow.
And by 10:30, I declared it to them before we took a break, saying, "Guys, I'm trying to do this transformational leadership program for you. I just want you to know, you know, I myself recognize that I need to dig deeper into myself, and I need to go into reflection period first. See what is next for me. I think somewhere this program has become a rote I have been doing out of concepts and abstractions and processes that I have done. I'm not fully present. I'm not bringing
Wow.
in what this doctor had brought in. So I need to go back." And there, and then I was afraid that I'll be tempted because they pay me well. What you call, when I do consulting with some other companies, I pay extremely well. When I'm paid that kind of money for what I'm making, the temptations are extremely high. So what
Yes.
I had to do was at 10:30, I announced between 10:30 to 10:45, there was a break. I went to the head of executive education who was there, and I told him, "This is the last program." I wanted to say I'm going to take Vanaprastha and reflect, but he was an American, and that doesn't make sense. I said, "I'm retiring. I had enough. I've been coming, 200,000 miles a year, 7, 8, 10 times to India and Europe a year. I think time for me to just take a break." So this is the last program.
Wow.
And that's it. I haven't done anything after that. I haven't done anything for any of the clients. And then I called another company, Intellect Design, that I was working with as a coach for the senior management team. I told Arun Jain that this is the last program. This is the last one. And so he said, "Okay, March anyway, your contract will end. So you don't want to sign up for another year of contract." I said, "No." So that was February 19th. By March, my contract is over. And since then, I have been reflecting, learning, what have I done? Did I really have enough to bring transformation to other people? If not, what would I do differently? Where am I? And can
Lovely.
I bring that transformation? So, what is happening out of that is that slowly my mind started dropping. What I mean by that is, I was a very cognitive guy because I was bringing from brain sciences. I was bringing from Western management models. I was bringing from Indian Upanishads and Vedanta frameworks and concepts and abstractions and models. I'm really good at that. And then I take some of these and then I create a process out of it that people can experience. So there is an experience and concepts, but I try to take people really, really deep as much as I can so that I could create an experience and see where they will end up, and create a safe space for them to do to the best of my ability. But now I look at it and say, I was full of my shit. If forgive my language, but I was full of it.
Wow.
And I think somewhere along the path, I think I was on my own trip, if you want to call it. And so now slowly my delusions, my mind, my concepts, my models, my memories, my recall of various frameworks from Peter Senge or Drucker or quotes or from Upanishads, or many of them are just dropping left, right, and center. So I'm coming to a place where my mind is becoming empty. So I'm first, that created a large amount of concern. Oh my God, I'm losing touch. I'm no longer capable of being able to do that workshop 4 days in a row. Three programs, one after another I used to do. Now I can't even teach 1 hour, 1.5 hour without my throat going sore. So that I'm losing my physical and intellectual capabilities. Then suddenly it occurred to me just recently, I started the transformation process 2 years ago. It's still happening. Actually, I don't know where I will end up. I don't know what will happen, but I am right in the middle of it.
Wow. Mm.
I can be afraid and jump away from this, or I can give up on this, but I don't know what will happen tomorrow, what will happen today. So I just need to operate without the mind. So that means dropping the mind is exactly what I need to do. I don't know what it means to drop the mind. With Krishnamurti looking at and different perspectives, you use the mind to transcend the mind. You know what? I think my mind is actually right now a barrier, it looks like. It is going away. But I don't have the capacity to deal with spiritual or emotional to the same level as my physical or intellectual. But you know what? So be it. I'm in the center of it. I have
Mm.
no idea where it is.
Wow.
And so, why did I give you this? Is because the models of centrism or frameworks, I can give you a large number of things, from, as I said to you, from a management to medical sciences to metaphors and similes to Upanishads, where they talk about, or in psychology, like Viktor Frankl's type of stuff. But I am in that gap. That's the gap they call.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
That is the space between one extreme and other extreme. I am in that space. I have no clue, but I know very clearly that it is a choiceful place. It is not something that I can drop in autopilot way. This is not like a near death experience I'm being forced into, and then I may come back transformed, but I cannot go into near death experience again and again in induced drug induced kind of stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. Consciously, awakenedly being into this place and fully knowing. It took me 2 years and I didn't even know what is happening. I thought I completed the process and I'm happy, but in between, my reflection is still going on. I'm still going deeper and deeper and deeper into it. I don't know whether I have come to the end. So that is what I'm looking at as a dynamic center. So instead of examples, I thought I should tell about where I am. I don't know what else I can talk more about.
No, thank you, thank you. That is so much from the heart and so touching, Prasad. Thank you so much. I just want to acknowledge that, and it opened several threads for me, which I wanted to share. Uh, One was just it made me reflect on my own experience with what I had called rediscovery of India, and it was a search for a center, and I started 2017, and I started with that intent to say that there's something calling me very strongly, and I need to act on it. And it started fine, and slowly it started getting speeded up, and opened myself to what seemed like a field of energy. And with my bipolar diagnosis, and I would say my ego, because there's like I am doing this kind of thing, I slipped into one extreme, which was like a manic phase, followed by a long depression, and then a restoration back, and then a restart. And then 2019, the same cycle repeated again. And 2 cycles later now, when I'm looking back, this time, one is I didn't act immediately. I gave myself some time to just recalibrate. And I realized I was so conceptual and abstract when I started out, because it's like PPTs and models and the classic MBA in me, who's dreaming of so many things and like building castles of air on PowerPoint without really touching anybody, like just it's my trip, like you said, and so much of that creating my own excitement and I-ness, like you said, the I, like it's my trip. So this time I think what has hopefully been at least a little different is stripping away all concepts. And even with the fellowship, I strip down to just two questions: are you committed for life to inner outer transformation, and are you willing to walk together? And those two are also like not binding, like it's optional, right? But that kind of invitation, I could come into just that invitation. And finally we got into this talk, because we've been talking forever actually about this, right? We were planning a workshop in Fireflies, and now finally it's happening. And I'm realizing that the only way to make this happen is to be in the center, right? I cannot do this if, yeah, what you said I think was so important, that the pathway to discovering the center is to staying centered, and in that gap that you are in. So I pick your energy and I receive it, and I hope to embody more of it as well. So thanks for sharing that, and that work happens through us. The other thing, Prasad, that came to me was that your decision at ISB was not impulse, right? So for me, it didn't land as an impulsive decision, but really a decision from the moment. And I just thought that distinction is important, also because you went through 30 years of this, you went through 14 years of that program, you were so full of knowledge, and that is also you were so erudite. And this is the simplicity on the other side of complexity, right? It's not that there is something about that journey also that I feel each of us has to take to come out on the other side, and I'm wondering about that as one.
Sure.
And related to that, the other thing was also, I feel like our culture has this access to anybody. Like you said that Dr. V was a surgeon and he accessed that space. You're a professor and you're tapping into that space. And I would say Nisargdat Maharaj was making BDs and accessing that space, or Kabir was a weaver and accessing that space. So to me, it seems like the access to the space does not depend on the content, but it's almost like there's a journey, a process, right? That's
Right.
what's opening up for
Right.
me.
Yeah, my journey was recognizing being an intellectual, being an academic, being a consultant. Obviously, I'm dependent on the models and I'm dependent on the cognition. There are a couple of companies in the earlier stage of consulting. I really tried to help them navigate them beyond consulting. I tried to give guidance on an operational stuff a lot more. At one time, the founder, one of the four, founders, he laughed at me and said, "Prasad, would you like to join us? Because you are more passionate about what we should be doing at some level, and you are really more committed to this at some level." You know, then I realized my passion for helping them and getting results that allowed me to overstep the boundaries of being a consultant. And I was actually behaving like I'm an actor, or I'm a chairman of their company, and I'm actually, shaking them up so that they can act much better. You are the directors. You can't do this. You need to
Hmm.
do A, B, C, D. And that woke me up, and I realized I'm too passionate. So that means my passion for action, my bias for action cannot actually get in. I need to recognize I am not the actor. I am only a catalyst. I can sometimes accelerate the chemical process if I am with the right,
Hmm.
if I give something, or I may be able to decelerate if they are moving towards a disaster. But I'm not
Yeah.
making anything happen. I'm not responsible. And
Right.
I'm not, actually, I don't have that power. But still, the imposter syndrome will always be there, especially when you are working with $1 billion and a multi-billion dollar CEOs or $1 billion company decisions. And if I have to help them with a strategy, or if I have to help them to hire or fire people whose, livelihood, you're talking about people in very, very high levels and who have responsibilities at a very high level, I realize the delusion that I'm important, I'm playing an important role, and also certain um, fear that if I make mistake, this could be a significant stuff. So I had to really look at it, all the time between the ups and downs of what I needed to do. And also the question is, they spend a significant amount of time trying to deal with whether they are buying a company, whether they are changing the business model of the company, or whatever they are doing. And if they want to sell a company, their services division completely, you're talking about a 400 $500 million sales opportunity for them. And if they believe so much in a software product rather than the software services, they're selling what they have built for 25 years, and they're going to depend on something else. And if this is what the CEO wants, and if he looks up to me to give him guidance and give him models of entrepreneurial stuff and give him confidence and courage, what right, what knowledge, what experience do I have to be able to say that? Fully knowing, obviously, I am a coach. He trusts me, but he's not going to make a decision just based on what I'm saying. I need to tell what I know by being in Silicon Valley for 30 years or 40, 35 years, and working with a large number of entrepreneurs. I could do that, but still the fear of what if I am wrong? What if I am making it all up? And they know so much about where they are, but I know very little because it's only based on what they told me, or when I get a 360-degree feedback, or if I have been working with that company for a long time and I have talked to their customers, they have talked to their multiple levels of people, I have a picture of what they are and where they are. And sometimes I'm even a stockholder, so I have a sense of what's going on. But how much should I tell? Wait, if I can tell something with such a little information, there is, and if I'm right, there is an arrogance that comes. Oh, see, look, I could just tell this, and this is what is happening. There is an
Definitely.
ego. On the
Yes.
other
Yes.
hand, there is also a fear. They are paying me, $10,000 or $20,000 for my visit. Now, I am saying something that will cost millions of dollars for them, 10 times, 100 times the value that they are going to expect from me. If I make small mistake, that could rebound as a big loss for them. So I always was scared and at the same time curious, and I had to really get to a centered place. I cannot say it from my perspective because if I am afraid of being wrong, or if I am actually trying to say something that will save my neck, that doesn't work. So I cannot keep
Right.
focus on my consulting job, and
True.
I cannot focus on this because I found many times I'm the only one who needs to tell the truth. I need to tell emperor has no clothes for this
Yes. Yes.
lady or this guy,
Yes.
this senior
Yes.
vice president, that CEO, this founder. So I know every time I open my mouth, I could be risking my job, or I could be risking the ire of the person, or I could be telling the truth that he doesn't want to listen. So, so I can understand the bipolar nature, the anxiety and the depression, and anxiety and depression,
Right.
and getting into that. But I realized I have to be, I have only one job. First thing is, I'm not hired. I mean, I may be hired by them. That person is not my manager. I need to recognize I'm reporting to the board at some level. So that means even if that person fires me, that is fine, but I need to tell the truth. But I need to tell the truth in a way that they can listen to it. Satyam bruyat,
Yes.
priyam bruyat. Right? Yeah, I need to tell the truth, but I need to create a context in which that leader can listen to some of that. it is incredibly stressful. Every time I come back, that there were times when my wife told, when you are gone, I have two kids to take care of. When you are here, I have three kids to take care of. When you are gone, you are not available to help. When you are here, you are like so exhausted, mentally tired, physically tired. You need to change it. So so over a period of time, I've looked at it. So if I answer your question straightforward, was that a impulsive decision? No, it was something for 30 years I have reflected on. And at that moment, it was emergent at some level. Something, a clarity emerged in that space, in that
Yes,
silence. When I truly listened to, I listened to it not as a teacher of transformational leadership. I listened to it as a student of transformational leadership who is in the position of leading at that particular time.
nice,
So when I
nice.
gave up being a teacher, student in me was also awakened. So what it means is, if I am not being equal amount student, my teacher is not as effective at all.
Right, right.
Right? So that means, again, you are coming to the
Again, we are
centrist
back to a
position.
polarity, and
Back
yeah,
to
teacher,
polarity.
student, and yeah,
Right? Am I a
lovely.
teacher or am I a learner?
And yeah,
I am
you're
actually have to take both.
yes,
I
yes,
need to
beautiful,
listen to the
beautiful.
context. I need to
That's
learn about them, each person deeply, because when they paid like a 2 lakhs for a program and they are spending 4 valuable days away from their job and family, everything which I say can have importance. So I need to be extremely careful in dealing with each person, because I can impact them very
yeah,
powerfully.
yeah, yeah.
So I need to be present to that centrist position. I
Right,
might have
beautiful.
never met them before. I
Hmm.
might never see them afterwards. But this moment they have given it to me and they are paying attention to me. This is important. I need to pay attention to them as much as they are paying. So that means we are both in this place together.
Hmm.
And I need to come from that place, what is emerging. When they ask me a question, what is most appropriate?
Yes, yes,
Right? So
yes.
when I am doing the program, what was most appropriate? What is emerging in the moment? At that time, it was clear. It was crystal clear. There was not even 10% doubt that am I doing the right thing. I think I have overstayed my, what you might call a stay, overstayed my welcome as a teacher. Now I need to go become a student again.
Nice.
So that's what, so it was not an impetuous decision,
Yes, it
but
wasn't.
it was a very powerful decision, especially because I'm not regretting and I
Yeah.
have not gone back and I
Hmm.
have not worried about it. That means I really paid attention to that intuition and I'm
Right,
glad I did.
right.
And that intuition is available in the center, not in the
Yes,
edge.
yes, yes. That intuition as a way of knowing is available in the center.
Inner
Beautiful. And
knowing.
loving how we're also seeing it's almost like a fractal. I'm seeing this pattern of polarities and swinging to the poles and center suddenly emerged even in the teacher student dynamic. And it's interesting. It's almost like there's a pattern which you can see in so many contexts and so many places. And I think we're trying to name that pattern. So I'm going to shift context, Prasad, into where India is right now and maybe where the world is, which is a very polarized place. And
Yeah.
the intent of this conversation is also what would it look like to birth a collective that is ideologically center of center, not, and by center again, I didn't mean average, but I meant very contextual, very choosing what to do without getting married to markets forever or government forever, conservative forever or liberal forever, but really what is the context.
Yeah.
So just holding this question of what would a centrist movement ideologically then, should it even articulate something, because center is a process almost, not like a permanent fixed position. And when there is an ideology, people align on it, and I'm like, what do we do now? Like, how do we build a movement that is centrist? So one is of course individuals who are constantly practicing trying to get to the center and so on, but when it comes to a collective level, how do we do this? What is a pathway to articulating the center to building alignment around the center? How would what's a good way to go about that?
See, look at Peter Block's some of
Right.
his work. He
Yeah.
talks
Yeah.
about invitation.
Invitations. Yeah.
You have to invite people, and you begin to see who are awakened and caught by that invitation, who want to play with you. So you have to build a community of people who are transforming themselves while they are transforming the nation or the community or
Mm,
anything else.
mm, mm,
Because
mm.
I do not believe this is like I of course, as you know, I have been an idealistic person, and when I quit Apple at one time, I was looking at transforming the world, you know, discovering how to disrupt, how to discover a new language in which we can connect. All that I looked at. I actually worked, you know, I always had goals. Like when at one time in 1990s, Dinesh Chandra and Anil Sachidev and myself, we looked at it and said we need to transform at least 300 leaders in the business world who can transform India, you know. So we worked on it. We used to go to Dharmashala and we had conversations with Dalai Lama, Swami Tejomayananda. You know, there are mullahs, there were Christian fathers and bishops, and we had conversations through all of that in variety of times. So I focused on outward. We even created something called uh, what you call a foundation for human and economic development. Like human development normally happened in non-profit or without money. Economic development didn't take care about people. So we felt we needed to balance this like a Rajarshi concept, like a Janak Maharaj. You can be spiritual and at the same time you can be a politician or a king. So like that, the centrist concepts were there for a long time. But I found out that at some level, it is I cannot transform outside without transforming inside. Again, the polarity between inner and outer.
Wow. Nice. I hadn't got
Right?
that one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So 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 only thing I can look at is when I transform, it is interesting. As I'm going through all this internally, my relationship with my family or other people is also transforming, is changing significantly. So when I worked on transforming a relationship with my family, with my friends, with my community, with something else, that was very different. But now I'm actually not trying to change anybody, not trying to transform anybody, not trying to look at it. That doesn't mean I'm not concerned about them. I'm not worried about them. I'm not worried about the nation or so. But the way in which I had to go about at that time was I'm passionate, I'll be a leader, I will try to convert so many people to do this, then together we will go change it. But after 40 years of my work, essentially I realized I'm not a community builder. I'm a domain expert. I'm a teacher. I am a capacity builder.
Mm,
I can build capacity in somebody else, but I have no clue how to build a community. I have all the theory behind it. Reason why I'm saying I have no clue, I have all theory, but emperor has no clothes. I haven't built any community around me. Or I have not been part of any community in which I have been playing for a
mm,
long period of time.
mm,
I
mm.
move from one community to another community to another community. That means I'm a lone ranger. I have not learned how to work with other people really very well. But once I realized there are certain things which are inhibiting my own part in being able to transform my own family or my own community, or I'm not part of other groups, whether it's a teachers community or spiritual community, or I'm not, you know, I'm not as much part in my own community of people who live around me. What it means at some level is I need to transform, first of all. What does it take for me to be part of the community in which I live,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
the family that I live, the society that I live?
Right.
And interestingly, as I am doing more and more work inside, there is outer stuff that's also happening. There is a way in which things are falling in place, which I worked really hard for a long period of time. Let me, instead of conceptual, let me make it very grounded so that it becomes very interesting. Because I have been specializing in bringing Indian wisdom, mm, Indic wisdom, which has got, Buddhist principles, because I have done Vipassana meditations. I have gotten initiated into Taoism. I have been a part of an interfaith group for several years in Ann Arbor with, Judaism, Christianity, the people in Chicago Archdiocese, and what you call mullahs, Sufi, and Hinduism, Buddhism. I have worked with the Dalai Lama Foundation, some other people. So I worked in a large number of some of these kinds of interfaith and inter type of stuff. But over a period of time, at some level, I found that I have really been doing alone in some respect. Some people come in, they will bring the Indian wisdom, they will bring a Hindu wisdom or a Buddhist wisdom or something else. They write books, they do programs. But mine is continually not putting down Western wisdom, management, marketing, strategy, all of it, not putting down the brain research, cognitive sciences, some of them, and not putting down spiritual wisdom, Vedantic wisdom. I found at the intersection of these three, you can ignite the genius within.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I tried to bring, even till, when I was in ISB as a professor or running a center, I tried to bring professors, all kinds of people into gatherings. Like I had 2005 in Fetzer Institute, I had a gathering on wisdom. And I brought from Center for Creative Leadership, Harvard University, Boeing, various companies to come together, all kinds of people to sit down for 3 4 days and see whether they're interested in developing wisdom in the community,
Hmm.
wisdom in Swazi, and focus on the Indian wisdom or spiritual wisdom to be brought into management. Not much happened. I tried desperately, and 2 years ago, when I retired, I gave up that also. I said, okay, fine. You know what? Whatever I have developed over past 30 years, that's fine. This is not the right time. This is not the right thing. If it has a, if it has to come up, it will come up again. It doesn't matter. I can't just say all what I learned about Indian wisdom application in the world can be put into, or it cannot be documented. Fine, let it go. Interestingly, after I retired, there was another gentleman who showed up and he said, Prasad, we need to develop based on what you are doing, at least a year or 18-month program on inner transformation. And because, the Indian wisdom, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, of course, Hinduism has got so many frameworks and processes and Yoga Sutras and Vedanta that can help bring inner transformation, which is what we have studied for several thousand years, and you have been using it all around the world. I want you to develop an executive coaching program on that. And I said, nope, I'm fine. Right now, I'm no longer doing any of this. I said, fine, I'll get you some people who can work with you and they will have their own wisdom. Together, you can build it. I said, when it happens, I'll see. He said, no, can you become the chairman or can you join the executive committee of this, whatever? No, not interested. I'm not interested in taking positions. I'm not interested in taking roles. I'm trying to see whether there is a way in which I can actually do inner transformation. I'm not interested in. having different roles. And but interestingly, that's how Raghu Anantanarayan came together. He is now the president of that Center for Inner Transformation. And Sai Sampath and Manikantan, some of these people are working together. And so it looks like they are putting together a program for a 1 year program on whatever they call a fourth level transformation, inner transformation. First, we thought we'll put together a program which people can get accredited or get certificate. So we decided, actually, the founder said, I'm not interested in any of this. Actually, what you are doing is not about a course or a certification. This is not for people who will do your course and go get a job. But this is about if they are transformational change agents, if we can create a immersive, authentic, deep experience, transformative experience, out of which they can do the work that they do, that will be the kind of gift that we can give. So now we are putting together something. So the what I'm learning is I need to have that intention, and then I need to let go of that. That I have a
Sure.
role, or I will do it, or I will find a process,
Right.
or I will be the center, or I will try to make it happen. Have deep desire, have conversations with other people,
Mm-hmm.
and work with other people. Talk about how we need a certain, what you might call a, non polarization, you know. So when you call it a center, people mistake it for something else. If you were to call, we want to look at a non-aligned with any position. That's why the non-aligned word was very
Movement. Yeah,
useful for a
yeah.
lot.
Non-aligned. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
why in Vedanta, that
Nice.
non-duality, it is not called
Non-dual.
monism, it is not
Yeah.
called oneness. So
Right. It's
even though
called
some of the people
non-duality.
created oneness university, oneness stuff,
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
not consolidating itself into one, but it is not two. There is a
Yeah.
lot of power to not two, but not one.
Right,
So
right,
similarly, it
right,
is not two poles, but it is not one center.
right.
And if you can keep talking about it and create communities, work with people, whomever who are interested, ask them to see what they are willing to do. Dialogue. Just keep studying where they are and keep deepening that for them as well as deepening it in yourself.
Mhm.
What does it being in the center really mean? Because as we talked about, there are so many layers,
Yes,
and keep
yes.
digging into
Keep digging. Yeah,
lower levels,
yeah.
lower levels, and whatever needs to happen will continue to happen. It is not a
Yes,
doing thing, it is a being thing. You have to
yes.
bring a being
Yeah,
transformation. It is
yeah.
not
I
a
think
doing transformation.
that's a very important one. I think the mind gets caught up in doing. So that. So thanks, Prasad. I think this is a very important one, the being and doing distinction, and that being is the anchor. I think that's a very important pointer for me also, and a lot is opening up even as you're sharing this. So I'll not ask. Some of my questions were perhaps now I realize fairly in abstract and fairly like I can always come to you and ask them when they actually arise. A lot of them were questions about, how do I decorate that room in my airy castle? But like it was a airy castle, so I think I'm getting in touch with how so many of my questions are probably hypothetical, abstract, and not necessarily what is emerging right now. And I think for now, there is so much that you have shared to sit on and to chew on. I think just one thing that stood salient for me, Prasad, is how you went into your own experiences. And I think what stood out for me is my own tendency to abstract things because of a greed for speed, that when things get abstracted you can speed up. But I think when you were sharing your experiences, it was slower, and yet it was so real and granular, and I think one thing I'm taking away from there is the value of staying close to experience rather than fancy concepts, because the mind
No,
loves
closer
that.
to the center.
Closer to the center, then the center is where the experience has real, where it's happening, and then you abstract. So thank you for that. So just a last couple of things. One is And I'll combine these questions so that it can also include your final remarks as well. India as a Jagat Guru, and as somebody who holds wisdom for the world, and where we are right now seems to be far from that in terms of being the Jagat Guru. Is there a pathway you see to that? And uh, so that something around what do we at a national level, what do you see is needed or is possible? And any closing remarks that you may have about our conversation, both I think would be great to hear.
I see the question in a slightly different way. I think time for India is now. There is no question. There is already prominence, and India has become a significant player on the global stage. Whether you take economic, whether you take technological, whether you take medical, variety of things. India is no longer a developing nation, but it is at the center. Some recognitions will come sooner, some recognitions will come later. But with power comes responsibility. So we need to be able to come from a place of creation and come from a place of honor and what you might call becoming comfortable with our place. Because especially in the past 100 years, we have been, like a Britishers going away. At some level, we were at war. We were subjugated for so long from the English and the Mughals and Portuguese and everything else, that we actually, at some level, we were not in the center with respect to who we were.
Hmm.
So there
Hmm.
were two things. There was a ego of our past and the shame of our present. The combination of these two was coloring our future.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we may have to go back to, again, the center, the several thousand years of center may not be to even past few years or few hundred years. We may have to go back and gain that self-confidence and, like right now, we are doing all the right things, but we don't need to go to extremes in anything. We need to stay in the center. We need to stay where it's like the hub of a bicycle, hub of any wheel for that matter. It moves the limited. It doesn't look like it has impact, but it anchors the entire wheel,
Hmm. Nice, nice. That's
right?
nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if you have two polarities, what it means is they are like two hubs being connected, around which the two wheels are turning. Two
Hmm.
wheels of progress is happening.
Hmm.
Only
Hmm.
thing we need to do is we need to balance that you know in between place so that the both wheels go in sync. So what are those two wheels? One is the self confidence, atma gauravam. Second is regaining at some level our source of wisdom, because whether you take technology, we are at the center. You take the marketplace, we are at the center, because after China has been exploited, the India is the biggest market that many of the people from all around the world would like to dip into. So economic, market, technological, medical, educational, spiritual, and wisdom wise, there are lots of things India can offer.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But we need to take the role, just like Biden came in United States and went off from adolescent kid syndrome that the previous president had shown. He's showing it as a mature old man. Like recently, people are saying, how come his poll ratings are so high in the first 100 days? Like even President Trump was commenting that he has become a Saint Biden,
Right.
because he's like a Teflon. He's not anything which we throw at him. he's getting more positive reviews rather than negative reviews.
Right. Right.
So where does this come? Because he's coming from the center.
Hmm.
He is
Right.
not coming from the progressives completely. He is not coming from the conservatives completely. He is saying, I want to unify, but at the same time, he is saying, I'm not coming from a place of unification as a weakness.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
speed is important. If things are not going to happen, then I'm going to leave you behind and go. So some people are looking at it and saying, oh, you said unification, you are actually dividing the country a lot more than uniting. But you know what? It depends on both polarities to do some work.
Hmm.
It cannot
Hmm.
be one. Yes, these people are in power. Other people have to give a hand to them, and then they can work together, and then they can make it happen. So, same way in India, how do we do that? I think if we can get more people to look at between the economic and the spiritual, between the um, governing party and the opposition, and between the um, greatness of our country and also the weakness of our country, can we look at both of them? Can we
Hmm. Hmm.
only, if we only say our richness and our greatness, you need to recognize, you are only talking about all the negative stuff, it doesn't work, because you are generating a hatred for journalists
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
hatred
Hmm.
for the Western way of doing things.
Right.
We need
Right.
to, like what you call, like a Ken Wilber calls, include and transcend.
Right. Right.
So the role of a centrist or a person who is a non-polarized, in a polarized perspective, if you want to get, you need to include the opposition and
Hmm.
transcend the opposition.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that include and transcend. So that means we need to figure out a way how we can create a third way, the middle path, which is higher than the both of those,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
the left and the right.
Lovely.
The you know, so
So
that means
integration, it
integration
includes and
leads
transcends
to
the two. Beautiful.
ascending.
Sure.
If
Sure.
if that integration is only leading to same level, it is not going to be useful.
It's not going to be useful.
We need to
Absolutely.
find a way both have to win. So it has to be a
Yes. Yes.
win-win-win
Absolutely.
position.
Win, win, and win. Like all three. Yes. Beautiful. That
So if
captures
we
some of
can
my
think
intent
about
as
that,
well.
I
Yeah.
believe the centrists will find more things. There is a significant role for being in the center, for being non aligned, being non polarized, but being wise about both polarities, being able to see the shadow of both of them and the strength of so of them, so that they can connect with their strength and neutralize their shadow. That is a tricky way for a centrist to do. Centrists cannot just say, oh, why can't you guys get along? That doesn't work that way.
Hmm. Hmm.
Why can't we take a middle path? It doesn't get that way. You need to take this fellow by the neck and show him how much he's missing out by not connecting with this fellow.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you
Hmm.
need to convince this fellow that there is a lot of value in the other fellow. When we can do that and create a path that will get not at a nation level, at a global level, we can. So these two polarities may be opposition in the national level, but together they can go to the higher level in a global situation.
Nice.
If
Nice.
we can convince them, if we can do that, I think the centrist position that you are talking about will become very relevant and meaningful. But if it is the lowest common denominator, that
Then
is
it'll
centrism, then it
then
will not
it'll
work.
not. Lovely. Lovely. Great, Prasad. Thank you so much. And with that intent, I'm closing this one. Thank you so much for your time, Prasad. And I'll keep coming back to you on so many of these
Oh, it's my
conversations.
pleasure. I enjoy talking with you. Namaste for now and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.